Jania is a single mother who does everything she can to care for her daughter, Arya. One morning, she wakes up to the sound of the alarm clock and loud music coming from the neighbors. Arya sleeps beside her with headphones on so she can rest. The small apartment they live in reflects how difficult their situation is. They barely have the essentials, and the fan is broken. In the bathtub, Arya tells Jania that she can bathe herself now, but Jania insists on helping her because she doesn't want her to get hurt again. Then Arya tells her that her teacher and classmates made fun of her for not being able to pay the $40 for school lunch. As they head out to school, Jania gives her last few coins to Benny, a homeless man. Their landlady, tired of the late rent payments, tells them she's already filed for eviction. Jania promises that she will get paid today and bring her the money during her break. But the landlady warns her that if she doesn't, she'll throw their things out. When Jania asks her to tell the neighbors to turn the music down so her daughter can sleep, the landlady refuses because they do pay. After dropping Arya off at school, Jania promises her that she'll give her lunch money today. But her day is only just beginning to unravel. At the supermarket where she works as a cashier, the customers treat her poorly, and one even throws a glass jar at her. Her boss, Richard, instead of supporting her, scolds her and orders her to clean it up. Bonnie, her co-worker, is concerned and offers her money for Arya's medicine, but Jania refuses. She tells her that the doctor said Arya will get better as she grows, and that she'll even be able to return to her nursing studies. She just needs to hold on a little longer. After Bonnie leaves, Jania receives a call from Arya's school. They ask her to come immediately. Jania begs Richard to let her go. He reluctantly gives her only 30 minutes and mocks her when she asks for her paycheck. In a desperate attempt to get money for lunch and return to work on time, Jania tries to withdraw her last $47, but the bank declines the transaction because she must maintain a minimum balance. Nicole, the manager, explains this and tells her to wait in line when she tries to explain her situation. Jania runs to the school and upon arrival receives devastating news. The teacher has called family services because she believes Arya is being neglected, and they're about to take her away. Jania tries to explain that her daughter has seizures and needs medication. Arya, frightened, wants to go with her mother, but they won't allow it. The social worker says that the teacher and the principal claim Arya often arrives hungry and sometimes dirty. Jania tells them she works 2 jobs so they don't go without food, and that Arya, due to her condition, eats only what the doctor prescribes. She explains that sometimes they have no gas, and that's why there's no hot water, but she still bathes her. She pleads with them to believe her, but they take Arya away, leaving her devastated. Little is said about the kind of motherhood lived in solitude, without helping hands, where everything depends on one person who ends up being both the wall that holds everything up and the rope that's about to snap. Because without real support from the state, the community, the family, or the school, all the weight ends up falling on her shoulders. That is Jania, and there are many Janias, mothers who carry alone not just what is seen, working, feeding, caring, cleaning, handling the urgent, but also the heaviest burden that no one sees, the mental load, that endless list of things that swirl around in the mind and never switch off. The worry about money that isn't enough, the fear that something will happen to their children, the anguish of having no one to turn to when everything collapses, the rejection and social judgment, the constant fear of failing. It's a stress that never lets up, not at night, not on Sundays, not even during vacations. It drains the body and wears down the mind, the hope and the will, until one day one simply breaks. No one should experience motherhood like that. No one should carry the weight of the world on their shoulders alone. No one who gives everything and tries again and again should always crash into a new wall. And if that happens, it's because the system is what's failing. But we'll talk more about that later. Just a quick pause to say that if you're enjoying this video and haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. It would mean a lot and really helps me keep making more videos and content like this. Alright, let's get back to the story. Desperate, Jania runs to her job, hoping to receive her paycheck and get her daughter back. On the way, she accidentally scrapes another car. The owner, who turns out to be a police officer, confronts her aggressively and intentionally rams her vehicle. A female officer arrives and tries to calm the situation, ordering the man to leave. But before he goes, he threatens Jania, saying that if he ever sees her again, he'll find a legal way to eliminate her. The officer asks for her license, but it's expired. Despite Jania's explanations, she's fined and her car is impounded. Jania arrives at work 2 hours late, and her boss, Richard, immediately fires her. Though she begs him to reconsider, he refuses. When he asks for her paycheck to pay the rent and buy food for Arya, Richard tells her he'll send it by mail and throws her out. When Jania returns home, she finds all their belongings dumped in the rain. Desperate, she only picks up her daughter's backpack containing her science project and medicine. She decides to go back to Richard's office to demand her paycheck, but the manager, annoyed, again tells her it will be sent by mail. At that moment, 2 armed men enter to rob the store. The assailants try to put money into Aria's backpack, but Janya refuses. She struggles with them, seizes one of their weapons, and shoots him. The other flees. Instead of recognizing her bravery, Richard accuses her of planning the robbery and calls the police. In a panic, she shoots him and kills him. Dazed, she grabs her paycheck and runs to the bank across the street, hoping to cash it before closing. Nicole, the manager, lets her in. The title of the film says it all: straw. It refers to the expression "the last straw," that final weight which, added to so many others, makes it impossible to go on, ultimately breaking something that's been holding it up for too long. That is the idea running through the entire film. The moment when someone, after enduring too much for too long, finally breaks. And that breaking point doesn't come from a single day or single event, but from the accumulation of everything that came before. It's a slow process. It's every microaggression, every act of indifference, every injustice, and every rejection piling up. It's the landlady who won't listen, the bank that enforces the strictest rules precisely on those who can't afford them, the police who threaten instead of protect, the job that humiliates instead of supporting. The final drop that breaks everything is never just one. It's the result of years of exhaustion, of not being seen or heard, of, just as Janya suggests, feeling like no one cares. And no, Janya isn't fragile or breaking. On the contrary, she is someone who, day after day, has shown a strength that few possess. But the body, the mind, and the heart all have their limits. Meanwhile, Detective Raymond arrives at the supermarket, checks the security footage, and interviews Bunny, who tells her that Janya is a good person and a loving mother who would never organize a robbery. Bunny explains that Janya is going through a difficult time and that she's all she has. Then they go to the building where Janya lived and find out she was evicted, that her daughter was sick and needed medicine. Then he explains that although Janya was struggling financially, she always gave him a few coins and describes her as a good woman. All of this moves Raymond and brings back memories. At the bank, Janya is attended to by Tessa, who asks her for valid ID to complete the transaction. Janya realizes she doesn't have any and, overwhelmed, pleads with Tessa to help her, reminding her that she had served her before. She explains how serious the situation is, but Tessa says she can't break the bank's rules. Desperate, Janya discreetly shows the weapon she took from the robber. She does not threaten anyone, but the gesture causes panic and unintentionally makes it look like a robbery. Tessa hits the panic button, and Nicole, the manager, receives the alert. When the suspect is described, the police realize it's Janya. In addition, Aria's science project in the backpack begins to flash, and Nicole believes it's a bomb, so she alerts the authorities. One of the most painful aspects of this story is how it shows the cold face of institutions that, in theory, exist to serve and support, but in practice so often become obstacles for those who need them most. And not because the people working there are necessarily cruel, though sometimes they are, but because the system is built in such a way that rules end up mattering more than the lives they're supposed to protect. It is deeply violent when a protocol, a regulation, or a procedure holds more weight than a person's suffering. And in the film, we see precisely a bureaucracy that doesn't listen, doesn't look, and doesn't understand, and perhaps doesn't even want to understand the context or humanity of the one asking for help. Everything is set up to ensure procedures are followed, even if that means leaving someone who works hard and tries their best out on the street, or taking a child away from a mother doing everything she can to move forward. What's most infuriating is that this dehumanization hides behind formality. They say this is what must be done, or these are the rules, and thus justify their indifference. They forget that behind every rule is someone who suffers because of it. And when institutions stop seeing people, they stop fulfilling the purpose for which they were created. They no longer protect, they crush. And the danger is that we begin to get used to it. Perhaps we already have. We start to see it as normal that a bank won't show flexibility, that a school chooses to suspect rather than understand, and that a judicial or healthcare system fails those who need it most. Dehumanization begins when we forget that rules should serve people, not the other way around. And perhaps what we need most urgently is to look at ourselves as a society and ask whether we've turned our institutions into soulless machines that only know how to follow a process, even if they destroy the very people they were meant to care for along the way. Because until we place people at the center, these tragedies will continue to happen and will keep seeming inevitable, when in reality they are the result of choices we can change if we begin to see others with a little more humanity. The police arrive and surround the bank. Inside, Tessa begins to take out money, but Janya doesn't want to steal. She just wants to cash her $521 check. Everyone is on edge. On the bank's television screen, a news report airs claiming that Janya has robbed the bank and that police are waiting outside. Everyone inside watches the report. Nicole, the 2 employees, and 3 customers. Police Chief Wilson calls the bank to speak with Janya, but she hangs up. Raymond believes it would be better for a woman to speak with her, thinking Janya might feel more comfortable. She suspects Janya has been framed and tries again to contact her. Raymond manages to get through, and Janya tells her she didn't rob the bank. She just wants the money for her daughter. Raymond offers to help her if she comes out, but Janya doesn't believe her and says she's always had to handle everything on her own. Raymond then asks her to release the hostages so no one gets hurt. Frustrated, Janya explains that she doesn't want to hurt anyone and hangs up. Just when things seem to be calming down, Janya sees live news footage of the bank and, to her horror, recognizes the officer who had previously rammed her car and threatened her, now part of the team stationed outside. Janya panics, convinced that if she surrenders, she won't be treated fairly or be safe. Meanwhile, Raya, the other bank employee, places her phone to live stream from inside. One of the hostages asks for a chair, and Janya gives her one. She apologizes to the hostages for everything that's happening and argues with a couple who managed to escape without her stopping them. She tells those who remain, Raya, Tessa, Nicole, and the elderly woman, that she can't let that officer take her out, because then who would care for her daughter? She asks them for time to think. Raymond calls Janya again. Without her knowing, the call is being broadcast live. Janya says she doesn't understand why there are so many police officers outside if she didn't rob the bank. She just wants to cash her check. She's never stolen anything. She didn't even know she had a weapon. She didn't want this, but she's afraid to come out and be shot. She explains that the officer told her that if he saw her again, he would eliminate her. Raymond promises that no one will hurt her and urges her to come out to end all of this. But Janya insists she can't come out like this. She explains that the check was for her daughter's medicine, that her boss didn't pay her and falsely accused her, and that she was evicted. She says she works hard. She has 2 jobs and still can't make ends meet, and that she feels like no one cares. Raymond, moved, tells her that she does care. She shares that she was raised by a single mother and is now a single mother herself. She knows what it's like when everything depends on you. She remembers being evicted as a child and telling her mother that everything would be okay. She promises Janya that things will turn out fine and asks her to come out, but Janya hangs up, insisting she won't do so until that officer is removed. Chief Wilson orders an investigation to find out who the officer Janya is referring to. Inside the bank, everyone is moved by Janya's story, except Tessa, who thinks she's now being treated like a martyr. The elderly woman tells her that no one can listen to a story like that and feel nothing. She doesn't say what Janya did was right, but she hopes everything ends well for her. In Nicole's office, Janya sees pictures of her beautiful family. She knows she's going to prison for all this. Nicole tells her that she will, but one day she'll get out, and her daughter will be waiting for her. Janya doesn't want her daughter placed in foster care or left with her sister or mother. Outside, after the live stream of Janya's story, a crowd gathers to protest in her defense. But things get more complicated when the FBI arrives and wants to take over. Janya remembers when she first met Nicole. She convinced her to open a bank account by telling her, "Don't let them take your money." Thanks to that, she opened one. She asks why she cares so much. Nicole explains that she used to work in a wealthy neighborhood where loans and credit were granted easily, but she requested to be transferred here to help black women. However, there's too much bureaucracy and too many barriers that keep them from advancing. Then the heat becomes noticeable. They've turned off the air conditioning. Janya says she's used to it. The elderly woman recalls being born in 1943 and growing up without a bathroom or air conditioning. She says they're lucky, even Janya, because there's always someone worse off. Janya replies that she knows, and that's why she tries to stay grateful. The woman tells her that surrendering and coming out would be an act of gratitude. Janya says she never meant for this to happen. She tells them that something inside her broke at the hospital. She shares that her daughter was born premature, and the doctor wanted her to terminate the pregnancy because she didn't have insurance. The elderly woman tells her she believes her. People don't know how expensive it is to be poor, and she's right. Being poor is, ironically, often more expensive. Not because things literally cost more, but because when you have so little, everything weighs more heavily. What may be a minor expense for others can be the blow that unbalances everything for someone living day to day. But the real cost of poverty isn't just financial. It's in the time lost solving problems others fix easily. It's in the body worn down by little sleep and double the work for the bare minimum. In the health that deteriorates because there's no timely access to decent care. In the exhaustion of living on the edge, fearing eviction, job loss, illness, of worrying that tomorrow will be worse. That kind of constant stress eventually makes both the body and the mind sick. Many studies on structural poverty and trauma speak precisely about how the lack of resources pushes people into a state of permanent stress that ultimately harms them. The mind and body live in survival mode, where every day is an emergency, where there's no space to plan, to dream, to trust in the future. because all your energy is spent on something far more urgent, surviving today. Janya says she has no one, but Nicole tells her that she has her. Janya asks her to take care of her daughter while she's in prison, and Nicole agrees. The elderly woman begins to feel unwell due to her diabetes, and Nicole helps her out to receive care. Raymond doesn't want to let her back in, but Nicole tells her she won't abandon her co-workers. Then Arya's science experiment device starts beeping. Nicole, Tessa, and Raya think it's a bomb and that it's about to explode, but Janya turns it off and tells them it was her daughter's science project. Janya asks Nicole to let them know it's not a bomb, but Nicole tells her it's better not to, because that might be the only thing keeping the police from storming the bank. There's another topic worth discussing: sorority. Amid a story filled with tragedy and helplessness, we find a glimmer of light in the solidarity shown by some women. And I don't mean the hollow slogan often repeated as a mantra, but rarely practiced. I mean real sorority, demonstrated through actions that make a difference when they're needed most. Nicole, Detective Raymond, and even the elderly woman represent those women who, from their own places, choose to see, to listen, and not to join the chorus of indifference and cruelty. What each of them did, I assure you, is no small thing. When someone has been carrying everything alone for too long, the simple act of being seen by another person can be the first breath of relief in a long time. The first validation of their pain. The first "you're not alone," spoken not in words, but through actions. Especially Nicole and Raymond, who, from within institutions that so often fail, chose to break the cycle where rules matter more than people. Where judging and stepping away is easier, they chose the harder path, to come closer, to try to understand before condemning. Even in the coldest and most dehumanized places, there's still room for human connection. Being seen and heard doesn't solve everything, true, but it gives strength to believe, even a little, that there's still something good left in the world. It's worth taking one more step, and the most beautiful part of this sorority is that it didn't come from a perfect place, but from real women, with their own battles, who nonetheless chose to show up, to listen, and to draw near in whatever way they could. And perhaps that is exactly what we need, to truly be present and to truly see. And that is something we can all do. Tessa goes to the restroom and slips a message through the window saying it's not a bomb and that Janya only has a gun. With the FBI's arrival, everything becomes more complicated. They're prepared to use deadly force. Raymond acts quickly. She identifies the officer who harassed Janya, confronts him, and removes him from the scene. Then she calls Janya and shows her a photo to prove that the officer's no longer there, assuring her that no one will harm her. Janya, ready to surrender, releases Raya and Tessa. She also tells Nicole to go, but Nicole says they'll go together. Janya is surprised. No one had ever stood by her like that. She asks if Nicole will visit her in prison, and Nicole says yes, along with Arya. Then everything changes. The FBI reactivates Janya's phone, and a call comes through from her mother, delivering a devastating truth. Arya died the day before after a seizure. Everything Janya believed she had experienced that day with her daughter was a hallucination. The pain of reality was so immense that Janya's mind, in one final effort not to shatter, did the only thing it could to protect her, deny what it could not bear, and detach her from an unbearable present. She dissociated. Her mind created a parallel world where the unendurable didn't exist, where she could still cling to something, even if it was only an illusion. Janya spirals into crisis. In her mind, she imagines the FBI bursting in and shooting her in the heart. But that doesn't happen. Nicole calms her, takes her hand, and together they walk out of the bank. Raymond approaches calmly and arrests her without incident. Before getting into the police car, Janya thanks Nicole. This analysis cannot remain at the level of individual drama. As I suggested at the beginning, Janya's story is the story of a system of many failures. Her poverty, like that of so many people in the real world, is not a personal failure. It's the result of a system that fails to guarantee even the minimum for a dignified life. Something is deeply wrong when someone working 2 jobs still can't afford housing, proper food for the child, or the medication she needs. And no, Janya didn't need to try harder. Poverty isn't solved through effort alone. Please. Some people give everything, who wear themselves thin day after day, and still it's not enough. Because the problem isn't how much they try. The problem is that the conditions are designed so that most of the time, that effort simply isn't enough. And the cruelest part is how, when effort doesn't produce the promised result, the blame falls on the one who is already carrying more than they should. It's because you didn't wake up at 4. You should have gotten up at 3. 2 jobs aren't enough. Why don't you get a 3rd? The finger always points to the individual, never to the system. If the social ladder doesn't work for most people who do make an effort and work hard, then the failure isn't in the people. It's in a system where effort doesn't translate into a dignified life. The system fails because it's built to protect privilege, not to care for those who need it most. Because the support network that should be there, healthcare, housing, education, decent work, justice, safety, don't function equally for everyone. They are full of cracks through which people like Janya fall and disappear. It fails because what should be a right becomes an obstacle. Access to healthcare depends on whether you can afford insurance, because stable housing depends on whether you can scrape together a down payment or didn't fall behind 1 month. Because the job you should be able to keep becomes just another place where you're exploited and discarded once you're no longer productive. It fails because it made us believe that everything can be fixed with effort, as if we all started from the same place. It fails because it's full of bureaucracies that have forgotten the reason they exist: people. Because more devotion is paid to the procedure than to the person going through it. And worst of all, it fails because it makes us believe this is all normal. That living on the edge, raising children alone, fighting daily for the bare minimum is simply a matter of character and grit. Janya wasn't in that situation because she didn't try hard enough, but because the world she lived in was designed so that someone like her would always be standing at the edge of the abyss. No one should have to give their entire life just to stay afloat. It shouldn't be normal that someone who gives everything ends up just as drowned as when they started. The real failure is a system that demands twice as much from those with the least and still doesn't give them what they deserve. And perhaps the first step for us is to stop pretending that this is normal, because it's not, and it never should be. Thanks for staying until the end of the video. Don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend who you think might enjoy it. And you and I'll see you in the next one.